Hey guys, Hailey Lain aka Key Black here, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Cuff. And today I would like to follow up on the Professor Layton topic from last week with Ace Attorney. The one, the only, the original lawyer game, which is probably not the most exciting pitch. If you guys are not familiar with the Ace Attorney series, you're in for a treat. The premise of the series is you play as Phoenix Wright, a guy with a very unusual name, trying to be a truth-telling defense attorney. His whole thing is that he always believes in his clients 100% no matter what, and if he doesn't believe that they're innocent, well then he can't really do a good job as being a defense attorney. That's what he believes. There's a whole lot of backstory that you uncover about the character as you play through the first game. It turns out the rival character that you encounter, Miles Edgeworth, is actually Phoenix's childhood friend, along with a third friend, Larry Butts, who, if you haven't played the games, highly recommend playing them. I am going to be talking about some spoilers in this video. My introduction to the series was halfway through my sister playing the first 3 games and halfway through playing the 4th game myself before I went back through and played the first 3 games for my own, my own playthrough. I knew who Phoenix was from watching my sister play, but my real first exposure to him was as Hobo Nick in AA4, and it wasn't until after I had played that game that I went back and played the first 3 that I was like, oh, this is why people love Phoenix so much. The series was, I think, my first exposure to the visual novel style of game. Previously I had played mostly Sonic the Hedgehog, a couple Pokemon games here and there, but this was also before Professor Layton and Ghost Trick for me. It was the first story-driven game that I'd ever really played, and I completely fell in love. I think actually Ace Attorney is responsible for my original love for mystery and detective stories. The first case in the first game is very much, the tutorial level, but it still manages to be a really great introduction to the characters as well. And then the plot hook in Turnabout Sisters, I was completely hooked. Maybe it hit harder because I have an older sister myself, but the pacing was so good. I was always a huge fan of the fact that in the first couple of cases for each game, the culprit was revealed to the player before it was revealed to the characters, and so the rest of the gameplay was just about the uncovering and proving the truth once you knew what actually happened. And then with that set up, then the twist villains that would happen later on were that much harder hitting. It's like, oh, you thought you knew what was going on here, but you didn't. Oh god, the reveal that Von Karma was the actual murderer of Edgeworth's father, and then just the encounter where he stuns both Maya and Nick, and then you have to face him down in court, and it's like, oh my god. That's how you build up a really terrifying villain at the end of the game. And then it feels like a proper showdown, you got that renewed conviction that Edgeworth really was innocent all along. Oh god, the first Ace Attorney is so good. I also know that it's kind of an unpopular opinion. Usually the ranking as far as fans are concerned of the first 3 games is the first game is best, then the third game, then the second game is more forgettable than the other 2, but I am personally on the one end of that bell curve where I really love the final case in the second game. I'm just a sucker for the whole damsel in distress thing when Maya gets kidnapped and it's up to Phoenix to he has to balance his genuine pursuit of truth and justice along with gotta save Maya or else she's gonna be killed by this assassin. God, it was so exciting when Edgeworth finally gets a clue and is like, oh, that's the situation you're in. We're gonna have to figure out how to make this believable so that we can play both ends here. Edgeworth's whole triumphant return in the second game was just I was absolutely an Edgeworth fan growing up. But man, that final case, that was I think that's the first time that I ever experienced sweaty palms syndrome while playing a video game. I was like, I better not kill Maya. I was so afraid. I was saving at every point of dialogue that you could save before a prompt would happen where you'd have to answer a question. You'd have 3 options, and then 2 of them would lead to Maya's death or the loss of the case. Really, all 3 of the first games were just fantastic at building up that incredible tension. By the time the final case rolls around, you're like, oh, we're in it now. I know the full backstory here, and we really gotta resolve this because, oh my god. I don't really know where the series went after 4. I remember Ace Attorney Investigations being released, but I never played it myself, and I never really played any of the spin-offs after that. What I've seen of them is a lot more anime than the first 3 games were. They're not really my cup of tea, I don't think, but I was always really excited to see more of the adaptation stuff happening too. I picked up the manga novels when those were released. I started watching the anime back when that was being adapted. God, I remember the Takarazuka musicals as well as the English Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney musical project. And then there was a live-action movie which somehow turned Red White into a hobo, but still managed to keep the heart and soul of the parrot scene. I feel like it's a testament to just how strong the original game's stories were, that like there are so many spin-offs and so many adaptations of that original story. I still reference it all the time, from like the actual plot points to the memes and stuff that spun off from it. If you haven't played the Ace Attorney games 1 through 3, I cannot recommend them highly enough. Not only is it a huge part of internet meme culture, it's also just really good storytelling and really good gameplay. So if there is anybody watching this right now who's considering picking them up for the first time, I do highly recommend it. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. And I think I'll cap it off there, guys. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. I will see you in the next Off the Cuff. And yeah, thanks again.